friends, welcome back to my channel. My name's Chandra and I make videos about reading, writing, and all things books. I have my lovely pupper over here who is asking for attention, so I'm giving her just some head pats because that's what she like. Anyways, today's video is part one of a two-part series where I review my past book reviews. So I recently put out a video where I go over what my current rating system is and how I came to that conclusion and what it means for me, just so it could be like more helpful. And I also wanted to like engage in conversation and hear other people's thoughts. So now I'm actually going to like be honest and come out and basically just tell on myself for the way I've reviewed books in the past. So here goes. Number 1, The Blind Assassin. I still agree with my review of this book. Although there were things about the book that frustrated me, I liked the payoff of the book and the read, and I still think that the review was truthful and honest. And I think this is also interesting because I think I've reviewed 15 books now, so I think there'll probably be like 7 in each video for now. And yeah, this is probably in the middle of when I started reviewing books. So I hadn't necessarily reviewed a ton of books, and I've not, outside of like book reports and stuff in elementary school, I don't even think we really did book reports in high school for me. So it's not like I don't have a ton of experience with reviewing, but this is just like how I review. And as I've reviewed more, it's changed the way that I review and what I think. But I really still agree with this one. Number 2, Wuthering Heights. This kind of establishes the pattern that I'm a glutton for punishment, and making me suffer through a book, I will probably thank you for it. Like, it took me a long time to get into this book, but I really enjoyed it, and my review is a reflection of that. So I still agree with it, but I also am aware that this book is not for everyone. I do really enjoy the classics, though. That's just been my experience. Number 3, We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I've read this book several times. My review on it isn't very good, though. I've read this book enough times to go back and basically, like, looking at my review, I don't think it necessarily expresses all that I felt about it and why I liked the book. I should probably go back and either edit that review or write a new one where I'm actually able to put into words how I feel about the book. Because, yeah, my review, it's not really a review. It's just me saying, like, I liked it and I don't express why, and I think that's not a helpful review. Number 4, Throne of Glass. I like my review on this. I think it's informative. If someone doesn't find the same motivations I do for reading a book, they could read that and they could decide if they wanted to read the book or not. Because I say what actually was that motivated me to finish the book, and also why I enjoyed it. And I think that's not the case with all of my reviews. Number 4, Midnight Sun by Stephanie Myers. I also agree with my review on this one. I'm happy that I'm clear about my biases and I explain why I like the book, and I'm happy with the review, generally speaking. I think, it's something, it's like flavors from when you're a kid. Like, it may not be objectively good, but it's good to me. And I think that my review reflects that. Number 6, I think my review for the book Chalice by Mckinley, it could have been a bit more specific. This is also one of the first few books that I reviewed, so I do have that understanding of like where I was in my own review process. I did enjoy the book, and I remember I started it twice and didn't finish it till I read it, like started it the second time. And I wish I'd included that in my reasons why it was initially DNF'd, and then I went back and reread it. And I wish I'd put more of that journey, but I've read it. It was such a long time ago that I read it. I remember always thinking about it and being like, oh, that's such a good book. I really did enjoy that book. But I don't really say much more about that. And I think that would be something to include. Number 7, Shelter in Place. I don't agree with my rating on this book. I think it should have been a 2-star review rating. I remember debating on that. I really enjoyed the beginning of the book, but at some point it took a hard left turn and I didn't enjoy the book anymore. I think I should have included more about that in my review. And my ending feelings towards the book, I don't think it necessarily reflected all of that. But yes, I think I should have rated the book much lower. Number 8, The Cyborg Tinkerer. I feel like this is one of my best reviews. I think it's fair, and I gave a lot of reasons behind my rating. I also think someone who has never read the book could use that to decide if they wanted to give it a try or not. And I think that's ultimately the biggest reason for a review, is for other readers to be able to look at it and say, I think I would like this book. Even if I say I did not like this book, if I'm clear about the reasons why, someone else should be able to read that and be like, nah, they didn't like this book, but I would. Number 9, When You Find Me. I think I focused a bit much on the negative of this book. There were a lot of positives, and I did love the last line. I should have noted that some of the tropes weren't to my taste, and that this is how I figured that out. I think I was a bit hard on rating and the words that I used when I was reviewing the book, because it was like the last of a string of books that I read with some of those tropes. And by that point in time, I was just like, I don't care. This is like, no. And so I kind of took all of that frustration from the previous, I think it was like the third or fourth book that I'd read with some of those tropes. And I got to the end of it and I was just like, no. No, 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 no. And it all came out on that one book instead of being evenly dispersed over several books. But that's why it's important to read a lot. Number 10, Dead Ever After. I've mentioned this one a lot. This is the final book in the Sookie Stackhouse series, which is what True Blood, the HBO show, is based off of. This is not a book review. It is not. I can't even say it's a bad book review because it's not a book review. To be fair, I've read all of the books in the series. That's the only one that I've rated or reviewed, whatever you want to call it. But I was also extremely disappointed in the ending of the series. This is still not a book review. I have such strong feelings on it, and I've even been talking very recently in my previous videos and on some other live streams about rereading the series. I don't know if I'm going to do that. I still haven't decided, but one thing I can say for sure, that review is not helpful. It doesn't say anything at all about the book. It doesn't say anything at all about why it made me upset. It doesn't say anything about why I have such a heated response to this book. I should have waited till I wasn't in such an angry, vengeful state to write this. I don't know what to call it because it's not a review. It's just, it was just vitriol basically at that point. I was livid. I have a great reverence and respect for books. When I tell you that I almost yeeted this book across the room, I was so mad. And I don't damage books. I don't write in them. I don't mark in them. I don't dog ear them. That's a whole nother conversation, which I'm not going to get into because I have a lot of opinions on that. Not the point. I wanted to burn this book. That's how mad I was. I was upset. It's still not a review. It's terrible. That's on me. And I think I may need to reread the whole series just so I can go back and review that book and actually give it a helpful, useful review, because what I wrote was not it. Number 11, Allegiant. I think this is my most scathing review. I'm actually really impressed with myself because this is one of the first book reviews that I ever wrote. And I had just started reading fiction at that point, like maybe a year or two. In the first couple of years that I was reading, I did not read very many books, but I had strong opinions on this. And I think the series would have been better from Tobias's point of view. Ultimately, I still think that. Like, having finished the series and then gone back and read 4, which is the prequel, which is from Tobias's point of view, I still agree with the review. I do. And there's a lot that I like about that series, but there's some key points that I think even as a person who is new to reading, new to the genre, new to fiction in general, that I picked up on, and I didn't, like, I put it into words very clearly, and I'm impressed by that for myself. Like, future me is looking at past me and like, good on you, because you did good there, and I still agree with that. Number 12, Fallen. I hated this book. I think my review was honest and pretty good, although I didn't take into account that it is YA. And I believe that was originally a fanfic. I'm not sure on that. If it is, and you know what it's a fanfic of, put it in the comments, because I think I heard that somewhere, but I don't remember exactly where I heard it. I don't typically like fanfiction. There's a few very specific ones where I've surprised myself and I'm like, I like this. But I can see where it's reminiscent of the original, but I can also see how it stands on its own. I think part of the reason why I hated this book so much is because I was already a young adult when I started reading fiction. I read a lot of YA, and I think there's a lot of really good stuff in YA, but also the amount of angst that came out in Fallen was a bit too much for me. And at that point, I was already married, so some of the tropes would be very juvenile and frustrating and irritating to me, and I didn't have the appreciation for them. I don't know. I do still have the book. I might go back and reread it and do another like rethink on that. But based off of the ending, I remember just hating the book and not wanting to continue with the series. So I only ever read the first book. And the last one, number 13, is The Dark Prince, which I started reading because I saw that one of the books later in the series was free, and I like wanted to read it, but because it's like a free book. But I was also like, I have to read everything in order. It's a problem. So I was like, well, let me go buy the first book. I will read it, and I will just zippity-doo all the way through the series, get me my free book, and it's going to be great. No. I DNF'd it. I hated this book. Like, I feel like Fallen, I had a level of engagement with the story that brought out like a passionate hate of like, why'd you do that to this story? With The Dark Prince, this hate was purely based off of moral atrocity. Like, I object to this book on a moral level. And I think that is reflected in the rating that I gave it. I think it's a good review, and it will be helpful for other people who can't stand this kind of thing. And for people who it doesn't bother, I still think they'll be able to read it and be like, oh yeah, I'll read that book. That sounds fine to me, because they won't have the same moral requirements that I have. But I think that's why it's a good review, because it lays all of that out, and if someone wants to disregard that and still thinks, no, I think I'll still enjoy this book, they can still read it, and my review will not hinder that. But I think for anybody who has the same feelings about these kinds of subjects that I do, then the objections that I point out in the review will be helpful as well, and will save them the same shock and horror that I felt when I started reading this book. Yeah, that is my review of my past book reviews. I hope this was helpful. I'd love to hear your thoughts if there's any of these books that you've read and you agree or disagree with my rating, then yeah, I think that'd be really cool. But I'll also link my Goodreads so you can see all the books that I've rated, and these books will show up on that list, and you can kind of look at it and be like, yeah. Or, I think you're terrible and you shouldn't review books anymore, which I'm still going to review books, but I mean, you could tell me that. I'd still like to hear why you think that. I don't know, not the point. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed, found it helpful. I'd love to hear what you think about any of these books that you've read, and I will see you next time. Bye.